Today we're talking about the 7 questions I see buyers forget to ask. I'll also have a couple 2 or 3 bonus questions that I see buyers with kids forget to ask. So let's get into it. All right, guys. So it is a dark and rainy, cold day in Austin, which I hate. So I was sitting around thinking about questions that buyers forget to ask. And clearly I'm in real estate, so I remind my clients of these, but I see this. These are questions I have to remind people about all the time. All right, number 1 on my list is what's being built nearby. So this can be both good and bad, but knowing what's coming around you is fairly important because, on the good side, is there retail shopping going in? Is there, a movie theater coming in? Things that you would actually use. But on the bad side,
Dad,
oh,
what's this for?
well, hello.
What's this?
That's to block the light. It's called a filter. What?
It's kind of silly.
What? All right, I'll help you. Okay, I'm back. I would want to know, is there, if there are big commercial lots around there, who's buying them? What are the plans? Are there roads coming in? Are they extending a highway that's going to cause traffic for the next 4 years? Is there a gravel pit coming in down the road from me? If it's going to be retail with shopping and movie theaters, that's going to be a positive most likely. Some of the other things I talked about will be a negative, but either way, it's important due diligence on a house. While we're on the subject of that, something that I didn't have on my list, but I see this fairly often, is if the house you're buying backs to a greenbelt, make sure that is in fact a greenbelt, because a lot of times it can back to a wooded area or an overgrown area that seems like a greenbelt, but that isn't really dedicated land. So for now you have a greenbelt back there, but if that belongs to a rancher or farmer who's going to sell that and they're going to put in a public storage or something, that could drastically affect your home values and your views. So number 2, when were major items in the house replaced, if at all? So this would be things like the roof, the AC, the hot water heater, things that could be fairly significant if they failed. It's important because if you're buying a home with a 20-year roof or 18-year-old roof, then you're basically buying a house that in most cases needs a new roof right away. And that can be expensive. So understanding the age of these things when they're replaced is important. If you're buying further out on land, then you would want to know, for example, when's the last time the well was serviced? Same with the septic system. When was it last cleaned out? When was it last serviced? So number 3, ask to see the utility bills for the past year. This is something that I see most buyers forget or not even think about, but I think it's super important. Now, if the house is older in Austin, it does have to get an energy audit, but energy audits, if you ask me, are pretty dang worthless. I think what's important is to see the actual utility bills for the past year so you can gauge exactly what you're going to be spending on a monthly basis, because that at the end of the day, what's going to go out of my bank account. No matter what the energy audit says, if it has a super high electricity bill, then I would want to know that. Okay, number 4, ask your realtor if they would buy this house themselves. This might seem like a strange question, and a lot of you might be thinking, well, those realtors, they're always going to say yes. And in some cases, you're going to be right. But the majority of realtors I know, at least that I know, are pretty good folks. And sometimes if they're a newer agent or if they are shy, they may not tell you this. They might be seeing that how excited you are about the house, and just in their mind, they're thinking, well, this is what they like, and it's not my personal thing, but this is what they like, so I don't want to burst their bubble. But I think it's really important to get that realtor's opinion. You don't have to take it, but understand if the answer is no, understand why. What are their issues that they're looking at? I got this question early on in my career, and I remember for me it was fairly eye-opening because it really caused me to look at the house differently. I wasn't trying to see it through their eyes. I started seeing it through my own eyes. That was really important for me because it changed the way I kind of interacted with clients from then on out, meaning that, I don't think you don't want your realtor to be the most positive, optimistic person on every home you're looking at. You need them to be critical. Okay, number 5, measure the garage. So this doesn't affect everyone, but this is Texas. So if you have a big truck or an SUV, sometimes they don't fit in the garage. Sometimes if you have 2 of them, both don't fit. So I just think it would be the worst thing ever to buy a house to move in, super excited only to figure out that your vehicle won't fit in the garage. And a lot of times folks are, they just spend a bunch of money on the house. So it's going to be a while before they get another vehicle. So measure it. It's usually length, but every now and then it can be height or width. Okay, number 6, which way is the house facing? So this is not like a feng shui thing. It is a heat thing. In Texas, afternoon sun is brutal. And as we all know, the sun rises in the east, sets in the west. So if your house faces east, that means the backyard is getting afternoon sun. And if you don't have trees to block that, or other, like 2-story houses behind you to block that, that backyard, it might not be usable, at least in the afternoons. So I would definitely check on this if I was planning on spending time out there. Best case scenario, on your second visit to the house, figure out when the sunset is, that afternoon sun, like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and visit it then if that is a possible concern. Okay, number 7, find out the percentage of renters in the neighborhood. So this doesn't hold true with every neighborhood, but I would say the vast majority it does. The more renters you have in a neighborhood, the more run down it can tend to look, and the more turnover you might have of people moving in and out, because renters turn over a lot faster than buyers or owners. And this is nothing against renters. When I was a renter, I did not treat that home like my own because it wasn't. So I didn't take super good care of the front yard. I didn't trim the bushes. I didn't do all these things that you need to keep a neighborhood looking good. If you don't believe me, think about the last time you rented a car. Did you treat that with as much care as your car? I guarantee you the answer is no. So, percentage of renters can affect the overall look of that neighborhood over time if the percentage is too high. So I would definitely try to get into a neighborhood with a fairly low percentage of renters. So that takes care of the 7. I'm going to give you 3 quick bonuses for folks with kids. The first one is understand what the turnover rate is in the neighborhood. Ask about that. And your realtor should be able to calculate it. I've got a video I'll link below all about turnover rate. It's kind of something that I think is more important than a lot of people, but I feel like I can justify it. Basically, it's how often people move in and out of the neighborhood and why that matters. But for kids, where you want them to form bonds and know their neighbors, I think it's important to know. I would go for a neighborhood with a lower turnover rate. Now, if you have real little kids, I think it's real important to know a couple things, but mainly how far is the nearest grocery store? Because with babies or very young kids, it's not uncommon to have to make hot shots up to the grocery store at 9 at night multiple times a week. Clearly, this isn't like the end-all be-all of buying criteria, but I think it's important to know. To add to that, I will say not all HEBs are created equal. So I would say I would want to know how far away that grocery store is, and I would want to go visit that HEB. I got a thing with like bad HEBs, but I would want to go visit and make sure it's a good HEB because I know with kids I'm going to be spending a lot of time there. Okay, and lastly, especially with young kids, is this house on a feeder road? So a feeder road is like the main trunk line that comes into a neighborhood. It's where everyone comes in and goes out of the neighborhood. There's 2 things with feeder roads. Number 1, they get more traffic, particularly, in the morning and after work. But also they're wider typically, and wider streets for whatever reason cause people to drive faster. So people usually go really fast on those feeder roads. So if you have young kids, you want a front yard that's usable. But if you're worried about your kids running out into the street and people flying down that street or it's filled with cars, that's an issue. Also, this is just a good thing to know in general for resale because anyone with young kids who does ask this question, and I think a lot of moms pick up on this, and some dads, but it's more of a mom thing, they understand that this is an issue and that will really reduce down your buyer pool. If you are on a feeder road, you might be cutting out 20% of your market because that 20% has young kids and this is an important issue to them. So, okay guys, that about does it for 7 things buyers forget to ask. If this video was helpful, like or subscribe. If I left out a super good question, put it in the comment section below, please. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one.